Okay, folks, I have 6:30. Madam Clerk, are we ready to go?
Sorry, just waiting for confirmation from communications.
Nathan?
Your Worship, we are good to go now.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, everyone in staff and council, and anyone in the audience. We welcome you to this Committee of the Whole meeting for budget purposes on this January 31st. And I call the meeting to order for 6:30. At this time, we have an agenda before us. Are there any? Madam Clerk? The system just told me that our recording has stopped. And it looks like our clerk has left the meeting for some reason. I'm sure she will come back in shortly, but I will stall until such time as she arrives back in here. Mr. Silver?
Yeah, I don't have any word from her, so I think probably her internet has gone out. So I suggest just waiting a couple of minutes.
We will wait a couple of minutes for her to return.
Yeah.
Do we have a deputy clerk here with us tonight?
Oh,
there
she's
is.
back.
Yes. Welcome, Madam
Yes.
Clerk.
Sorry about that. Let me just make sure that didn't wreck our streaming. For some reason I hit the wrong button on that one.
It happens, no worries.
We're still good, Your Worship.
Okay, then we are called to order. And again, I welcome everyone in attendance and make note that this is a virtual meeting. And if anyone's internet connection drops off for whatever reason, we will pause for a few moments to allow them to reconnect and then continue on, assuming we still have quorum. I would like to at this time inform the audience of regrets from two members, Councillor Porter and Councillor Gordon, but we do have quorum, so we can continue on. At this time, we have an agenda before us. Does any member of council have anything to add or edit on the agenda? Hearing none, I will ask for a motion to approve the agenda as presented. Councillor Townend, so moved. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Parks, thank you. Any comment? I'll call the question. All those in favor, please raise a hand. Any opposed? Motion is carried. Is there any disclosure of pecuniary interest in the general nature thereof? I'm seeing none. We shall move forward. We move into staff reports, and at this time we move into the 2022 proposed capital budget. And I believe either Mr. Dickey or Mr. Renier is here to make a presentation to us. And he even put a jacket on.
Jacket, everything. Good evening, Your Honor. I'll be kicking off the festivities tonight. If my internet drops, just assume I went home and carry on. Don't wait for me to come back. I'll be gone, okay? So I'll just say that. I'll be sharing my screen if everyone's ready, and we can kickstart the 2022 draft capital budget.
Go ahead, sir.
We're all good with that.
Can everyone see it okay?
Everyone's good?
Go ahead.
All right, so like I said, it's the draft capital budget separated out of operating. I'm off to a rough start too. So this is just the agenda for tonight. So before we get into it, I do want to just take this time to thank all the staff across all the departments who had a hand in preparing the draft budget. It's a lot of heavy lifting, finance, and I'm sure council appreciates it. So we do just want to point that out. I would also add for anybody that is watching from home, I would encourage you to visit the township website. The updated draft binder is available there. That does include all the capital sections that you'll see referenced throughout the presentations if you are trying to follow along at home. So with that, we're going to start with a general rate capital budget overview. That's where you will all get to listen to me for a bit. We're then going to go into specific general rate capital projects, and the different department heads will speak to projects of interest specifically within their areas. We'll then do the same for capitals or utilities capital with an overview as well as projects. After that, we do have a special section specifically geared towards the fleet enterprise management system. And if you remember back at the January, I believe it was January 4th Committee of the Whole, Public Works staff did bring a report around the enterprise fleet management, and we were instructed to bring back some options. So that's where we're going to discuss there. And then we will end the evening with next steps. And depending on how tonight goes, there's a couple options.
Thank you.
And I guess the best way tonight, if there's any questions throughout, probably just ask throughout instead of just waiting till the end. We can stop at any time if that's what people are comfortable with, Your Honor.
Thank you. I will ask council to shout out as I'll be watching the slideshow and not necessarily watching for hands.
All right, so we'll start with the general rate capital budget overview. And for those with the binder, it's tab 6 or page 51 of the binder is where we get into the general rate capital budget overview, or page 57. So this year, the general rate capital budget is about $10.6 million total. It's about a $2.2 million decrease over last year's general rate budget. This slide, it shows it in terms of the managing divisions and the different breakdowns. Which can be found on page 57. I did just want to point out, this is just new budget money for 2022. There will be a separate report. We're aiming to bring it on the March 14th regular council with the capital carry forward. We do have to get through year end before we can bring that out. And at this time, in addition to the 10.6, a new general rate, we are expecting approximately 13 million in general rate carry forward budget as well. Just so everyone's aware of that. And a complete list of that is found in Appendix E or tab 12. So this year, 10.6 million general rate capital. This is how we are proposing to fund that $10.6 million. As you can see at the top there, through reserve and reserve funds, we have about just under 1.7 million. The next slide goes into a little more detail on the use of reserve funds, so I'll save that for then. The next is we have the Canadian Community Building Fund, 538. For those that don't know, that's federal gas tax. This is the new name of the federal gas tax, and that amount is consistent with prior year Fed gas tax. We have about $2.6 million in grants this year. That number does include about just under $1.5 million in OCIF funding, which is a double up over our normal amount for this year. Don't know if that'll be a permanent thing, but for this year anyways, it was great help. That also includes about 500,000 in our OMPF, or just under 500,000. And then we do have about 700,000 in various other grants, which you may see throughout the presentation. Directors may refer to a grant. Not all of them were at this time allowed to specifically speak to because there's certain announcements and stuff, but we do have about 700,000 in other additional miscellaneous grants. If you see there, we got just under $500,000 in DC charges this year. That's per the recent DC study. 50,000 in third-party agreements. That's specifically for an island road project and a wind electric agreement. $50,000. We have 1.9 million in capital contribution pay-as-you-go. So that's about a 2% increase over last year, and that would have been part of the operating budget that's currently pending to be finalized. And then you'll see at the bottom there, we have debt or contingent on grant opportunities, about 3.4 million. So effectively, that's the funding gap this year, pending if we are able to find gaps or grant opportunities that could bring that lower. And a little later on, I am going to speak to the cumulative funding gap over the prior years and where we're sitting at as a total this year, including that 3.4 million to kind of give everybody a picture of where we're at funding wise. But that is how we are proposing to fund the general rate capital this year. Are there any questions up to now? I don't see anybody, but. All right. So the next slide, like I said, was just to highlight some of the reserve fund use. So we are using about 1.65 million out of reserve funds. The vast majority of that is from our fleet and equipment reserve fund, which we've earmarked just under $1 million to use from that reserve fund this year. We are projecting if we used all that out of the reserve, that reserve at the end of 2022 would have about $500,000 left in it. So that's quite a significant use of that reserve fund. The Industrial and Business Park Reserve Fund, $350,000. That's being used this year for continued servicing costs as part of phase 2 of the Loyalist East Business Park. There's some more costs going with that. And that reserve fund comes from like lot sales in the business park and things of that nature. We've definitely had a lot of activity in terms of that business park and lot sales. And as we kind of go through year end, we'll get a much better picture of exactly where that reserve fund's standing at. But it's definitely in a healthy position right now. There's some prepaid local charge reserve fund, a small amount. That's the old Amherst Drive urbanization fund that got kind of renamed, if everyone remembers that. And then the last two I just wanted to highlight was the road use agreement reserve fund. So what that reserve fund, for those that don't know, is based on the wind electric agreements, they do contribute about $75,000 a year specifically towards a road use agreement reserve fund. And we are proposing to use $262,000 out of that balance, as well as $91,000 from Amherst Island Asset Sales Reserve Fund. Those two would be used together. You'll see later there's $1 million in the budget for Stella 40-foot road work. Those reserve funds would be going towards that work on the island this year. So that's just to highlight some of the use of the reserve funds this year. Okay. I will move along. So I did just want to touch on I butcher this word every time, the cumulative funding gap. As I said earlier, so this year's general rate budget does add about $3.4 million to that. I just wanted to touch on the prior year. So if we remember back to 2021's capital budget, there was about just under $6.2 million funding gap or potential debt that was in that budget. Now, as part of this year, preparing the budget, departments re-looked at the project list. Some projects were deferred or have been adjusted. So that number has come down. So coming into 2022, the adjusted 2021 and prior funding gap is now at about 3.5 million. So when you add our 3.4 onto this year, you're coming in just at about 7 million in the estimated funding gap after this budget, including all prior years. Which potentially, so what that means is if we did everything in the budget and it all got done this year and we spent everything on budget, we would potentially have to take out about $7 million in debt this year, which we would start in 2023. I do just want to highlight that general rate capital reserve. There's more than 1.2 million, but there's 1.2 million in that reserve fund right now that is unallocated. So in theory, we could pull out 1.2 out of that reserve and that would net out to about 5.7. So that reserve fund, we can use that at council's discretion. We haven't built that into the budget yet, but depending on how projects go and cash flows, we may be coming back to council asking if we can make use of that 1.2 million. But that, just to make sure everyone is aware that that is kind of there too. So at the end of the day, the net gap overall is about $5.7 million. And I will speak to forecasted debt payments in a few slides as well. If anyone has questions, maybe for then. But so the next slide is just to kind of give a high level sort of a general 10-year capital plan. So the orange line there would be the capital requirement for general rate over the next 10 years. And the red line there is what we call the infrastructure deficit after using our general reserves. So the main takeaways there, 2023 is definitely a spike in the funding gap as well as the possible capital projects or requirements. And that's really a byproduct of in making the 2022 budget, there's a lot of things that come up and then we kind of defer or push off and they kind of land in that next year. Throughout the year, we'll continue to work on those plans, but that's why you see that big spike in 2023. That will likely probably get smoothed out when we go to look at that. As you can see, it kind of smooths out after that. But some of the big projects that are coming after this year right now that are sitting in 2023 that you'd see that big spike includes the continuation of Stella 40-foot on Amherst Island. There's $1 million in this year's budget, but there's also potentially another 3.4 million coming in 2023. The Odessa drainage project's a big project slated right now for 2023. And that includes 2 million of general rate plus some utilities rate. The Odessa fire hall expansion, which you'll see later on in the emergency services. There's $500,000 this year, but there's another 1.5 million for the actual construction part, which will be 2023. And then there's just various road projects. So that's just to highlight some of that. There's another slight little uptick there in 2025. And the main project that's resulting in that is Amherst Drive Reconstruction right now is slated for 2025 based on asset management replacement. And that's a $5 million project. And then right at the end of the 10 years out in 2031, you see it go up again. And that's mainly due to about $6.5 million right now in bridge work that would have to be done in 2031. Like I say, timelines of projects can change, and especially as we keep continuing to work more and more with our asset management planning, trying to smooth it out and build a more sustainable funding plan, you will likely see that smooth out a bit. And I did just want to highlight that this 10-year plan does not include potential work for the community hub. I'm going to speak to that later as well. But if the community hub, if one of our grant applications was successful, that would have a severe impact on the 10-year, as you can imagine. But I'll speak to that in a little bit. But this is just to give a quick snapshot of the 10-year. There are some more details in Appendix F there, tab 13 of the binder for anyone that was looking for that. Is there any questions on the 10-year?
Anyone? No, looks like keep going.
I'm going to be tired of listening to me soon, but I think I'm near the end. So the next one is just forecasted debt payments. This is also found in Appendix F, tab 13. And for those that do have the binder, there is a chart at the bottom there under this graph that does forecast the payments and has the numbers there. And it shows our annual repayment limit numbers in there as well. So again, just to mention, this does not include potential debt if we were successful in the community hub project. So just to give people an idea, currently combined in general rate and utilities in 2022, we spend about $1.5 million servicing debt right now. That's for a little over about 10 million in debt. At the end of 2022, we're projected to have about 9 million in outstanding debt. And that's pretty evenly split between general rate and utilities, about 4.5 million each. So right now we're spending 1.5 million based on the 10-year and those funding gaps. The peak for debt servicing wise would be 2027 there at just a little over 3.5 million. So as you can imagine, that's an extra 2 million over what we're currently servicing in debt. Now, if you do look in Appendix F, tab 13, our annual repayment limit, which is set by the ministry, we'd still be considered a moderate risk. So from a pure debt point of view, we are doing a good job. We don't have a lot of debt right now, the 9 million. We'd be considered moderate risk. I think the bigger consideration for council and for the township is what the pressure it's going to put on the levy and levy increases to service debt in the future, not the actual amount of debt. So for example, that 2027, if we followed this peak and we got to there and we're now servicing about 3.5, that's an extra 2 million a year, which cumulatively over that 5 years is about 2% a year or 10% after 5 years impact on the tax levy to service that debt. So you can imagine adding 2% every year just to service debt from capital projects puts some pretty incredible strain on the property tax levy. So, I mean, that just really highlights why we do continue to work on the asset management. We're constantly seeking out funding opportunities, and we're really trying to manage reserve funds to avoid such a high pressure on the property tax levy. But yeah, so that's all I have on the projected debt at this point. Am I good to go forward? Sorry, I can't see anybody.
Anyone have any questions? I'm seeing no hands at this point. Go ahead, Phil.
So the final slide, just before I end my section here, is just on the Community Hub project, and we did just want to touch on it. There is a brief write-up on it on page 55 of the tab 6 there in the binder. And so right now there is 2.7 million in carryover budget from 2021 that we are going to be asking to bring over to 2022. We have not budgeted any new money in 2022 or in the 10-year plan. As council knows, back in July, we did submit 2 grants under the Green and Inclusive Community Buildings program, a retrofit application as well as a new build application. We were hoping to hear back on those in the fall. We have not. They did ask for some follow-up information, so we're still waiting to hear the outcome of either one of those applications. And if we are successful with either one, it would also have an enormous impact. So right now, if we were successful with one of those, that 2.7 million carryover budget would be sufficient to kickstart the design and the planning phase if we were successful. Wouldn't be expecting construction quite in 2022. So depending on the outcomes of those budget applications, at that time, staff would definitely have to bring back a more fulsome report to council, which would include more of a 10-year debt plan and the capital plan in that sense, and what that impact would have on that. And there is a motion in the motions that speaks to that. But we did just want to briefly touch on the hub and its potential impact. But yeah, that's it for me right now. Are there any questions before we get into specific general rate projects?
Council, any questions? I did want to add to Phil's comments in that I did meet with our new MP recently and asked her to look into the status of those grant applications. I've had no feedback quite yet. Okay. If there's nothing further, Mr. Rainier, go ahead to, I don't know who you've got up next.
Yeah, so we're gonna, each department will kind of speak based on the managing division. So I do just want to say, before we get into it, kind of like last year, if you go to Appendix C, which is tab 11 in the binder, there are the detailed project sheets for every single project if you want a complete list. And those sheets do have the description and the funding plan for each project. So if you do go to Appendix D, tab 11, before we get into it, if you are looking for specific details on this. First up, we have information technology, and Ms. Chapman will be.
Okay. Ms. Chapman.
Thanks, Phil. The information technology division is basically our capital projects, and it proactively facilitates corporate excellence through the provision of planned technology upgrades and supported services. So in 2022, the planned projects are 22,000 in network server equipment, 65,000 as part of the annual computer replacement program, 17,000 for counselor devices replacement, and this is based on an election year where again we bring in new devices for the start of the for an election. The next two relate to risk management. So again, it's just trying to manage our risk. 65,000 for security cameras and 20,000 for facility security. And last but not least is it's under business services, but has a component with our information, our IT department in an HRIS, or Human Resource Information System. This will be used to collect and store personnel data digitally. It's a valuable input for data-driven decision-making in HR. The electronic data will give people managers a self-service ability to assess information of their staff. And through this one, the township has applied for funding under the Municipal Modernization Intake 3 implementation stream, although I don't believe we've heard whether we're successful on this or not. And again, all of that information can be found on the page 57, tab 6 of the binder.
Council, any questions with regard to any of these projects? I'm seeing shaking heads. Good to go.
Thank you.
You.
Great. Next up, we have emergency services, and our esteemed Deputy Fire Chief, Mr. Feeney, will be speaking to that tonight.
Hello, Your Worship, Council. First slide, we have a ticket item for $75,000 for the Bath Fire Hall roof. This is a life cycle item. The station was built in 2001. It's currently 21 years old. One section of the roof has been repaired multiple times due to wind damage. Our proposal is to put on a steel roof, at least on the rear westerly facing section that is subject to the high winds, which has caused us problems over the years. Next item is for extrication equipment. And this is to update the current Amherst station. This is due to the traffic volume on the Highway 33 corridor that has increased over the last 10 years and the number of responses that continue to grow annually on that road. So that would upgrade our extrication equipment for Amherst. Third subject item is $33,000 for PPE life cycle replacement. This is for our current firefighters that are on staff. This purchases bunker gear, helmets, boots, gloves, balaclavas, and this is our life cycle replacement. This is what we follow for our Section 21 NFPA standards to keep that up and going well. Fourth one is $30,000 for equipment replacement. This goes such as hoses, portable pumps, forestry firefighting items throughout the year. So that's for that ticket item. And last but not least is $25,000 for recruits PPE, which includes bunker gear, helmets, boots, gloves, and balaclava, the same as we do replace for the current staff. Next slide, please. So this is a fire expansion. This station was originally built in 1972. Expansions conducted have been in 1996 and 2005, some major upgrades to the station in those years. Structural repair was done in 2012 due to a portion of the original footing that had failed. That was repaired then. Identified that any future expansion requires more land. Of course, resulted in 2018 of January, the purchase of a parcel of land behind the station for further expansion. 2022 funds are for to start the design phase, site plan control agreements, and as well as to the new roadway that comes from Emma Street and allows trucks to return to the rear of the station. So that's what that ticket item is for 2022. Of course, 2023 is construction, which is slated at $1.5 million. And that is it.
Sorry, I was on mute. Council, do you have any questions with regard to any of the pieces within emergency services or specifically the Odessa Fire Hall expansion? And I will ask a question. I'm not sure if it'll be for the Deputy Chief or the Deputy Treasurer. I note in this final slide, 75% pay-as-you-go and 25% development charge. This is about growth. Why is that ratio so low?
I'm going to defer that to the Deputy Treasurer.
Yeah, so this was part of, this was included in the most recently approved development charges study. So the, one of the details of it handy.
Sorry, we can't hear you, Mr. Rania.
Oh, I don't believe I'm on.
No, it's just, it was a little bit garbled.
Oh, sorry. So in the last DC study that we just had approved, it was included as part of that. And what a lot of that calculation would have been based on the square footage of the building. So there is already an existing building there servicing, and then the addition or the expansion. So it's based on kind of the 2,500 square feet. And that's kind of the ratio they use that they could attribute directly to growth. Okay, that makes sense.
It's expanding by 25%, so it's 25% growth or something like that.
That's a very for all intents and purposes, yes.
Thank you. Any other questions with regard to the emergency services? I'll go to the deputy. Go ahead.
Thank you. The roof at the Bath Fire Hall, you had mentioned that they were looking at doing steel on the west side. Will it be entertained doing steel all around if it's financially feasible? And I'm just looking at future life cycle costing, where steel lasts a lot longer than shingles.
Through you, your worship, yes, Deputy Mayor, that would be the hopeful, the ideal situation would be us to replace the entire roof with steel. Once when we have all the figures, and we're going to take a look at it and then go from there. But yes, that would be ideal.
Any other questions with regard to the emergency services capital projects? I'm seeing no others. Okay, we'll move forward.
Next up, I'm going to call on Miss Merritt. There she is. And she's going to go over engineering and environment.
Okay, thank you, Phil. So the Engineering and Environment Division manages a number of capital projects for other departments and divisions. The general rate portion of the capital projects being proposed for 2022 adds up to $4 million and $3.1 million for the utilities service area. The focus for the capital program proposed for this year is really on the completion of projects started in 2020 and 2021, like the expansion of the County Road 6 garage, flood damage repair to roads on Amherst, the Simmons Road reconstruction, the Layer Cake Hall, and also a number of projects that will inform the infrastructure master plan. So although the number of construction projects is slightly less than previous years, it will be a very busy construction season. There's no getting away from that. The focus is also on preparing for 2023 and 2024 construction projects. So you will note in the binder, in the listing, that there's a number of design projects also being proposed for 2022. Next slide, please. So some of the key projects that I wanted to highlight this evening is there's a $1 million budget for the reconstruction of Stella 40-foot from the ferry docks to second concession and front road through the village. And it also includes stormwater improvements. So now that the ferry docks are complete, we can move forward with some of those construction projects on the island. The proposed budget is to complete survey work, design, and prepare to tender late summer 2022. The timing of this project depends highly on the relocation of hydro poles in the village, and it's to facilitate the widening of the intersection to allow for large trucks turning. Another project is the reconstruction of the Odessa Main Street, west limit of the village, going east to the Odessa Fire Station. This will include replacement of water mains, sanitary sewer repairs, associated general rate costs attributable to the township as a result of upgrades to the right-of-way. This project is being completed in partnership with the county, development community, and the school board, and is being proposed and is being moved up by a year to coordinate construction schedules for all the partners. We are also proposing a $50,000 budget addition for environmental assessment and modeling to inform the infrastructure master plan. And this addition is to include the evaluation of an expansion for the Bath water treatment plant. Although the infrastructure master plan is mostly being completed internally, external consultants are needed to confirm the equipment sizing, process capacity, as well as conducting a review of technology and options assessed against a set of criteria to consider financial, environmental, and social aspects to determine the optimal solution for future expansion. And lastly, I wanted to highlight that projects totaling $995,000 are planned for 2022 to align with proposed development. So these projects, such as the design of Windermere and Main Street intersection, McDonough pathway connection in Amherst, surface asphalt for Park Crescent. Now that the Loyalist Shore subdivision is nearly complete in that section, This practice is taking advantage of economies of scales in partnering with developers to upgrade municipal infrastructure that is beyond what a specific developer would be responsible for. And I think that's it for that section.
Okay. Does anyone have any questions with regards to that? Seeing none, just on the Odessa Main Street upgrade, forgive my memory, but is this the project that will align the entrance to Town Secondary with the street and create a new controlled entrance there?
Yes, it is, Your Worship.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions with regard to any of these projects? Oh, Deputy, go ahead.
I haven't been able to find it in the binder that quickly, so I'm going to ask it instead so I don't forget. The Odessa Main Street, the price that the budget that you're giving here, does that include the resurfacing afterwards, or is that strictly the utilities portion?
That is strictly the township's portion of the project. So the county would be the county. It's a county project, so they're repaving Highway 2, and they're doing them in sections. So they are responsible for the paving. We're going to do the underground before they get there, or
Okay.
around, or at the same time. But this is the portion that the township is responsible for the underground infrastructure.
Okay, so that's a part of aligning it with all the other players this year. Okay, thank you.
And if I may add, there's also, like, if the intersections had to be improved because of development, like the developer is responsible for their share, so is the school board is responsible for their share as well.
And if I may follow on that, we do connecting link projects on Main Street in Bath, because that is a provincial highway and we have a portion of that road kind of in the middle of that we partner with the province on that. We have, I'll say, a similar arrangement, if you will, although not quite the same, with the county, in that they own Main Street, but it obviously has work that we need to do on that. Would you say that there's an equivalence in the, I'll say, the ratio of expenses, or the, put it this way, does Main Street Bath end up costing us more because it's provincial and township, or the county road costs us more because of that relationship?
Okay, good question. Thank you. So I think the difference here is the county is fully responsible for the surfacing of County Highway 2, the same way they were fully responsible for County Road 6 when they did that last summer. So they're covering 100% of the resurfacing cost. We just look after the underground. We could basically have no expense if we weren't going to do any underground infrastructure replacement. They would just come along and pave Highway 2, and it's at their expense. The difference with the connecting link is basically the township, although the township is responsible for the cost of paving, the underground, obviously. That's a big difference. We're 100% responsible for this, but the province realizes that it is a connecting highway. So every once in a while, they come up with funding programs that we can apply to. And then if we're successful, then they will cover part of the cost, not 100% of the costs. So I hope that explains the difference a little bit, because connecting link, like if the township decided to move forward and pave Main Street in Bath, for example, because we feel that the service or the state of the pavement needs to be redone, and if there's no funding programs available, the township will foot the bill. That's the difference. But we wait until the funding, hopefully every once in a while, like the funding is on a frequency where by the time the road needs to be repaved, we can apply and hopefully get some funding. So it will offset the expenses.
Thank you. Any other questions with regard to these projects? Seeing nothing further. Thank you, MJ. Go ahead, Phil.
Yep, next up, we're gonna have Miss McFarland, and she has Recreation and then Public Works. First up, she's gonna speak to Recreation and Facilities. Lori, here she is.
Thank you. So the Recreation and Facilities proposed 22 capital budget is approximately $1.8 million. And the following is a brief overview of some of the projects that are planned. We have a number of roofing projects that are planned for this year, and they're based on being well beyond their life cycle replacement. And we have done assessments of these. Professional assessments have come in and advised that these roofs need to be replaced this year. Our plan is to combine all of them into one tender to assist with costs. Hopefully a larger tender will bring us a better price. You may be wondering why we're doing roofing work at the W.J. Anderson facility when we currently are waiting on grant outcomes. Unfortunately, this work must move forward as the assessment of the roof has identified that it's at a critical stage and it must be replaced now. The area that is being proposed is also not part of the area that would be part of a phase 1 of the HUD project if that is approved and we receive any funding. There is also, staff had applied for and received a grant to improve customer accessibility at the Odessa office, and the work will be focused on providing barrier-free access to both the public washrooms and the service counter. Next, do you want me to wait till I'm finished, or do you want to go ask questions as I finish the slide?
No, anybody have questions on the roofing projects and the accessibility project? I'm seeing none. No, go ahead.
Okay. There are a number of projects that are planned for 2022 that focus on township-owned heritage properties and grounds. The fencing and permanent outdoor washrooms at the Fairfield House in Amherst will be replaced and renovated. There are a few projects that need to be completed at the Babcock Mill. Sorry. And of those projects, a few of them are designed so that if we wanted to open the building to the public, we would actually be able to do that in the future based on some of the work that we're going to be doing there. The Nielsen store requires life cycle replacement to ensure that further deterioration doesn't compromise the building. And the layer cake hall renovations will be occurring in 2022. The tender for this project is currently open, and the plan is to begin the project in early spring if possible. And the engineering and environment division will be managing this project. The focus of addressing heritage property infrastructure assets will assist with achieving council's strategic objective of long-term viability of maintaining cultural and heritage assets owned by the township. Next
Questions,
slide,
folks?
please. Oh, questions?
Anybody? And okay, I've got them, of course.
Yeah.
The Babcock Mill upgrades, one of the ones I've heard of discussed in that is actually not specifically in the mill, but the bridge and a bollard installed on that bridge. Is that part of that upgrade?
It is. Yeah. The bollards on the bridge, the back area that's not right attached to the mill, that back building that houses some mechanical equipment, that's part of it. And then there are some things that, as I said, accessibility things and other pieces inside the mill that if we want to, it's about $5,000 worth of work inside the mill that we have to do if we want to make it meet standards to be able to open to the public.
Excellent, thank you. And with regard to the, I'll say 2 projects at Fairfield Park,
Yep.
I'll say this is the second one, the parking and washroom. Is that for the house or is that the parking lot and the a washroom facility over on that end?
It's the washroom facility in the Fairfield Park itself. The permanent one that's been there, it needs some serious work. So we're planning to complete that.
And the parking, that's not at the house, that's over in the parking lot, correct?
It is, yep.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions with regard to these projects? I'm seeing no hands. Okay, keep going. Thank you.
Yep. Pleased to say that many of our planned parks and sports fields capital projects for 2022 have received grant funding. This includes the dog park that had been presented to council earlier in the year, as well as the bleacher and player bench replacements that are planned. Council recently approved a new park sign design, and several township park signs that are due for life cycle replacement will be replaced in 2022 with the new design. During the operating budget presentation, I spoke briefly about a tree asset management program. This would assist in part with addressing the devastation of the emerald ash borer and the impact on our natural assets. This program will also assist with the management of natural assets, as well as meeting the strategic objective of being a municipal leader in climate action and environmental stewardship.
Questions or comments? I'm seeing none. Let's move forward.
The Public Works proposed 2022 general rate capital budget is approximately 3.9 million. There is also 117,000 proposed that is part of the utilities fleet that you will see when I do the corporate fleet project or overview. And a few of the public works projects. Our road works, the life cycle work on surface treated roads will continue in the same manner as over the last few years. That development of that program has been going very well. We'll do cross culvert life cycle and drainage works in 2022 in preparation for surface treatment in 2023. We got this backwards a little bit, but the life cycle culvert and drainage works in 2022 are related to the 2023 surface treatment projects of Scotland Road and Maple Road. And then this year's the surface treatment program that we're proposing will be on Chipmunk Road, Newburgh, a section of Newburgh Road, a section of Violet Road, and all the surface treated sections of Town Line Road. The front road reconstruction that is identified, it's for the surface treated section of the road east of the village on the island, and the work includes drainage, culvert replacement, and road base reconstruction, and then surface treatment.
Questions or comments? Seeing none. Yes, let's keep going.
I'll start with the heavy equipment and the fleet that's planned replacements and new fleet. So heavy duty equipment, staff are proposing to replace the existing vacuum style street sweeper with a more efficient mechanical sweeper. The vacuum unit for cleaning catch basins would be purchased separately in 2023 as an attachment of the new Roller Pro trucks. You will see that in the request when I identify the 2023 pre-budget approval requests. The mower that is partially funded by DC is a large style mower, and it has folding mower decks, and this will reduce the overall grass cutting times by operators and bring some efficiencies to this division. The miscellaneous equipment, there are a number of smaller pieces of equipment that are being purchased this year. They are all listed separately in the overview of the capital projects, but this includes a hydraulic angle sweeper, a grader blade extension, survey equipment, and portable stoplight controls are a few of them that are there. And then I just wanted to highlight the ice edger, simply because it's a life cycle replacement, but we're replacing the gas ice edger with an electric one, which will improve air quality in the arena, and it will align with our township strategic objectives to meet climate action targets. And it will go nicely with our new electric Zamboni that we put into service today when we reopened.
Any questions on that? The new Zamboni is really cool, by the way. And no, I didn't actually drive it, just sat on it. Okay, we can move forward.
Yep. So as part of the capital budget, there are a number of heavy duty vehicles that we're requesting pre-budget approval for that are in the 2023 budget. The tandem plow with the Roller Pro unit. This is a life cycle replacement of an existing plow, but upgraded to the Roller Pro system. This would be the second of 2 Roller Pro units for the township. These units provide versatility to township operations by allowing the rear of the truck to be quickly switched to different job tasks, such as sanding, dump box, flatbed, water tanks for DLA and calcium application, vacuum units. And as you'll see, the vacuum unit that we're requesting pre-budget for approval that I just spoke of is also here. Due to extended delivery times as a result of the COVID-19, we are asking for pre-budget approval to allow both the 2021 and the 2023 units to be ordered at the same time for delivery in mid-2023. The vacuum roll-off unit, its current equipment would be replaced with a more efficient mechanical style sweeper as identified in the earlier slide. And this unit would replace the vacuum capabilities of the existing sweeper by utilizing one of the new Roller Pro units in 2023. The loader with the plow wing, this unit was identified in the development charges study and will be an additional unit to the township's snowplow fleet to deal with the growing urban areas. This equipment would be utilized for plowing snow rather than a traditional snowplow, giving more versatility to the township's winter operations, allowing tighter turns in cul-de-sacs and roundabouts. When not in use for plowing, the second loader would be utilized for snow removal operations, such as the township snow dump or removal from cul-de-sacs. And in the summer months, this loader would be utilized on public works construction projects.
Questions or comments? Just so I understand it, Ms. McFarland, we are looking to pre-order. Again, this will be part of your recommendation later, but we're looking to pre-order these now for delivery in mid-2023, I believe you said.
Correct.
And they paid for out of the 2023 budget with a commitment to do it now.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because payment is upon delivery.
Yeah. Okay. Any other questions? Oh, go ahead, Deputy, go ahead.
I just want to make sure I understand the replacement of the street sweeper correctly. So there's going to be a mechanical sweeper without the vacuum for curbed areas. Is that correct? And then the vacuum roll-on would be for catch basins or cleaning out any utility installations within the road that would need to be kept clean, such as Mueller valves and things like that?
That's correct. I believe the utilities have their own tractor, but I think, or like their own unit. But I believe that's what we're proposing, that instead of using the one current piece of equipment that we have that honestly doesn't do a great job for either one, it's used for 2 purposes, and replacing them with pieces of equipment that are designed more to do the specific jobs that we're wanting them to do.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else have questions? then we'll move forward. Thank you. Go ahead.
Okay, this slide is an overview of the light duty vehicles that are proposed to be purchased in 2022, either through life cycle replacement or growth. There are a total of 16 vehicles. This number includes the 10 vehicles from the 2021 budget, and at an average cost of $58,000 each, which is a very large total. It includes additional funds that staff estimate would be needed to reflect updated pricing for vehicles of this nature. As identified at the January 4th Committee of the Whole meeting, staff have included these vehicles in the 2022 capital budget for purchase in the traditional manner. Our Public Works Manager, Alex Scott, will be providing you with a separate presentation at the conclusion of the utilities capital budget. This presentation will provide you with further information regarding the management of the township light duty fleet through the Enterprise Fleet Management Program. This will allow council the opportunity to explore the option further and provide direction to staff.
Okay. Any questions? Seeing none, we'll keep going.
And that's all you have to hear from me
For now.
For now.
for now. Thank you.
We're going to move into utilities now. Do you want to just move right into that, or?
Does anyone need a break, or? I think we just keep going.
Okay. Perfect. So next we're going to go into utilities. I'm just going to provide a quick utilities capital budget overview similar to the general rate. Oh, we're losing you, Mr. Townend. So the proposed 22 capital budget for utilities is a total of 3.9 million, just under 4 million. Oh, and I should mention it is tab 7 of the binder for those who are following at home. I'll go to tab 7. 2.7 of that comes from the water rate, and about 1.2 is from the sewer. And I will say, as of right now, we're looking at a projected proposed carry forward of $3 million in addition to this 3.9, but that will come with the general rate report later in March as well. This is the proposed capital funding plan for 2022. There's fleet equipment replacement reserve fund, about $60,000. We're using in-post growth and in-post club fees as well. Third-party agreements, which is namely agreement with Correctional Services Canada, which relates to capital work specifically to the Bath air plants. And then the water and sewer rates pay as you go is about 2.3 million. So overall, that's the projected funding for the 3.9 million. There is no projected debt from this year's capital budget with utilities, similar to last year's as well. Any questions related to the funding plan?
Anyone? No, looks like we're good to move forward.
Yep, perfect. So this is the 10-year capital plan for utilities, similar to the general rate. And you'll notice there's a few distinct peaks within this. You can see there's a peak kind of next year in 2023, and that mainly relates to the Odessa drainage project, which we talked about in the general rate as well. So there's 2 million in general rate, and there's about 1.4 million in the utilities rate. So a total project of 3.4 million in 2023. And there's also work on Bayview Drive of about 1.5 million in 2023. If you're looking at the red line for the infrastructure deficit, there is a bit of a gap in 2023 where we potentially may be looking at some debt within the utilities rate, and that's mainly due to those projects. The other peaks you see in a big one in 2026 and 2028 and 2030, those relate to expansion projects. And I know MJ briefly touched on the design for expansion, some of the engineering and environment projects. And those are some big projects that are potentially coming in those years. And that relates to expansion work for Amherst Water, the Fairfield plant, as well as the Bath water plant. The good news is you'll notice even in those years with those large spikes due to the potential expansion work, the infrastructure deficit after 2027, there isn't one, and it's just a really small one in 2026, even with that giant. spike. And what that relates to is our in-post reserve funds. So if anyone looks at our in-post reserve funds right now, you might think they look quite healthy. Well, that's because we've been saving up for these expansion projects that are coming down the pipe, and that's what they're there for. So that's what allows us to not have that big that gap there. But when we do those expansion works, those in-post reserve funds will be quickly depleted. But that's what they're there for, and they'll be doing the job that we planned them for. So that's kind of the 10-year, and then I'm gonna kick it over to MJ to speak to some specific projects after this, if there's any questions.
Any questions? Just anxious to hear from MJ.
Yeah, and not look at my mug. I get it. All right, over to you, MJ.
Okay, thank you, Phil. Okay, so for utilities, these are the projects that we'd like to highlight. These are new projects for 2022. So a budget of 200, one more zero, 200,000 for dewatering equipment for the Amherst water pollution control plant. We're currently spending over $250,000 a year on the operations budget in sludge haulage cost for this facility. The sludge storage facility is essentially a large pond, which is impacted by rain to the point where we're moving mainly water. So we recognize that our current biosolid storage is not really cost effective. So we will be researching for a new solution to reduce haulage costs and improve our biosolids treatment. So the dewatering equipment will help with that. We're proposing a budget of $109,000 for radio replacement. So the control and monitoring of external components of our treatment facilities are done mostly through radio frequency. So for example, data from the water tower in Bath is transmitted to the Bath water treatment plant via radio. So data such as water level in the tower, that controls when the pumps are coming on and off at the treatment facility. Similar equipment is used for the Fairfield drinking water system and the Loyalist East sewage collection system. So the proposed budget for 2022 is for the replacement of radio equipment, which is now obsolete and really obsolete. We can't find parts anywhere. Last time we had to go borrow for a different from utilities in a different city. Hopefully they had the older radio that they were getting rid of, and we just took them. So this is a life cycle replacement, and the new equipment will meet Industry Canada standards for radio communication. The next project is we're proposing $40,000 for the life cycle replacement of the last of 3 high lift pumps at the Fairfield water treatment facility. It's currently experiencing some continued decreased pumping capacity. So it's due for replacement. And lastly, another significant project for 2022 is the completion of the generator's fuel and exhaust system upgrade to correct deficiencies that were found during a recent TSSA compliance inspections of all our generators. The $275,000 is to complete the required upgrades for the Fairfield water treatment plant generator and the portable generator used for 2 sewage pumping stations in Bath. All of the other units have been completed in 2021. And that's it.
Questions or comments for MJ? Oh, Deputy, go ahead.
The first one, the dewatering equipment, is that the baker that produces the dry material, or will this just remove the excess water from like rainwater and whatever and still be a sludge product?
Yes, so that's a really good question. This is the first part of our biosolids management plan, but yes, this one is solely to remove the top layer of the biosolids, mainly rainwater. at this point. And then part of the biosolids management plan that we'll be exploring as part of our infrastructure master plan is to look at further biosolids handling, which could be, you know, like hauling it, dewatering it completely, so it's more like a cake or a mud to be applied to land, or keep it in liquid form. So this particular one will keep it in liquid form. It's just going to be more concentrated, which is what the farmers like. They don't like when it's only like 0.5% solids in their water. We try to aim for closer to 3% solids.
Any other questions? No? Okay, we'll keep going.
Okay,
Thank you.
so if you remember the agenda from start of this tonight, we're at the end now of the utilities portion. We're going to move into specifically discussing the enterprise fleet management program, and our public works manager Alex Scott's going to speak to that. So over to Alex.
Mr. Scott, welcome.
Good evening. So this part of the presentation is a follow-up to the Introduction to Enterprise Fleet Management report presented to Council on January 4th, 2022. After direction Council seeing with the Enterprise Fleet Management leasing program versus purchasing. As noted earlier in the budget presentation, there are 16 light-duty vehicles to be acquired in 2022. This consists of 6 vehicles proposed in the 2022 budget and previously approved in the 2021 budget. 9 of the vehicles are life cycle replacements in accordance with the township's asset management plan and have been identified in either the township's development charges or impost studies. Staff discussions with other municipalities, previous supplier, indicated that the current shortage of new vehicles due to COVID-19 manufacturing issues will likely result in less government discounts on manufacturers. Staff are also aware of an instance where there was only one bid for new vehicles that came from a company offering a used vehicle. The 2022 capital budget includes the cost of purchasing the 6 new vehicles and increases to the previous budget estimates to reflect current market conditions. While staff remain hopeful that some government discounts will be available, the 2022 budget reflects an increase of approximately $12,500 per light duty vehicle over previous estimates on the assumption that they will be minimal. Staff have reviewed a number of scenarios with Enterprise on a pilot project for 2022, where the township would enter into their program with the leasing of 16 vehicles subject to the approval of council. If council agrees, a report with the full enterprise leasing agreement will be brought forward to the February 14th council meeting seeking pre-budget approval. Staff are requesting pre-budget approval to move forward to meet the manufacturer's spring window for factory orders to ensure 2022 delivery dates. Enterprise has revised their previous estimates provided council to reflect 16 vehicles proposed by staff. However, final cost won't be determined until the order is formally placed and the manufacturer's spring has been released. Enterprise estimate includes $181,152 in annual leasing costs, one-time aftermarket costs of $48,100 which the township would pay up front. An estimated equity of $45,310 in the sale of the existing township vehicles that these vehicles are replacing. And this results in a 2022 cash outlay of $184,592 compared to the estimated $933,500 if the township proceeds with the purchase of 16 vehicles directly. Enterprise is estimating that the equity of the vehicles at the end of the term would be $184,643,000. The remaining equity at term and the equity of the existing vehicles is conservatively based on 2019 pre-COVID used vehicle prices. It did not reflect the current used market. The extremely competitive used vehicle market could result in higher equity for the township when the vehicles are sold. Next slide, please. We then took the costs for us entering the program, and we wanted to see what it would look like if we did it over a longer period of time. There. So this chart is a 10-year cash flow model provided by Enterprise, which shows what the program will look like if the pilot project is extended for up to 10 years with the full participation by the township, and includes a comparison to vehicles purchased outright. The proposal assumes the township fully entering the price leasing program by the end of the 5th year with 16 vehicles in year 1, which matches what the intended purchase would be for 2022. 8 vehicles in the 3rd year, 3 vehicles in the 4th, and 5 remaining vehicles in the 5th year. It's estimated that the township would continue to recognize savings over a 10-year period of approximately $237,000 over what the township will. Enterprise has indicated on several occasions that they've used conservative estimates to and expect the savings to be higher than those shown. With the exception of the HST and the OMVIC, which is the Ontario Motor Vehicle Industry Council registration fees, and both these fees would also be required if the township was to purchase directly. Enterprise has recommended recommended a more aggressive start to the program to take advantage of the current used market. However, staff would like to see the actual results from the 1st year before committing to additional vehicles. The actual number of vehicles future years will be determined by the township in consultation with Enterprise following a review of the pilot project and current market conditions. Next slide, please. So following the last presentation to council, we received a number of questions from various council members. And so I thought we'd just kind of quickly run through some of those questions and try and provide some answers to those. So, and certainly at the end of this slide, if there are more questions, I'd be more than happy to answer those. So the first question was, who determines our needs? So township staff have worked with Enterprise to review our current needs included in this proposal. Enterprise will make recommendations based on the optimal hold for each vehicle class that will achieve the greatest financial and operational benefit for the township. However, ultimately, the township will decide when to acquire and dispose of any vehicles. The township is not required to include all light-duty vehicles in the Enterprise program. So if there's a specific need in the future, we could still choose to purchase a vehicle or hold on to a vehicle for longer than recommended. The next question was, what is the out clause? So the township can choose to extend or end or extend the lease at any time after 1 year. And the 1 year is important because that is when the manufacturers provide government rebates, they require that you hold on to the vehicle for a minimal amount of time. If the township chooses to leave the lease early, we would pay off the remaining book balance owing on that vehicle to terminate the lease. If the township chooses to leave at the end of the lease period, we would return the vehicle and Enterprise will sell it, returning any excess equity to the township. Or, on the other hand, the township could choose to purchase the vehicle outright by paying the remaining book balance owing. Third question that we received was, how are changing fees handled? And I wasn't quite sure but what the question or what exactly the person was at for this one, but I believe they're meaning if fees change in the future after we've committed. So that's how I've taken it. If it's different, feel free to tell me afterwards. Fees are outlined in the RFP that was submitted as part of the LAS procurement process. Most fees are built up the upfront leasing costs of the vehicles. And if the fees change substantially in the future, the township can still choose to opt out at any time. Another question we received is, who authorized repairs and pays for it? So under the full maintenance program for newer lease vehicles, the monthly maintenance is built into the lease costs. The cost is fixed and inflation proof, and it covers everything on the vehicle with the exception of negligence on the behalf of the customer. So Enterprise's full maintenance includes all major and minor repairs, all recommended service, maintenance related to towing, incidentals such as fluids, belt, hoses, and basically no out-of-pocket expenses. If for some reason we required extra oil changes for whatever reason, we would pay extra for that beyond what the service plan recommended. Gas and parking is not included. Insurance related repairs are not included. Car washes, obvious neglect or abuse, any non-factory installed equipment, and safety emissions inspections are not included. The township can choose to utilize our own mechanics for any work not included under full maintenance, or we can actually choose to join the enterprise fleet maintenance program if we wish and have the mechanics do all the work. If a vehicle is in an accident, the township may choose to pay the enterprise, if a vehicle is in an accident, the township may choose to pay enterprise a $100 handling fee at the time of the accident to deal with the insurance companies and repair shops on our behalf. They would take the vehicle, they would arrange to get the work done on it, and basically they would charge us the deductible plus the $100 handling fee. The township also has the option of including our non-leased vehicles in their enterprise maintenance management system for a monthly fee. However, the township would still pay for the actual repairs. Staff are not proposing to utilize the enterprise maintenance management program at this time. One of the other questions was which garages can be used. So Enterprise has over a dozen authorized garages in the local area as part of their maintenance program, including one located within 5 minutes of the County Road 6 garage. Any garage can choose to become part or become an authorized garage, including the township's own fleet services, as I mentioned earlier. However, the township garage is not planning on participating at this time. I did have a discussion with the local garage that is within 5 minutes of the garage, who indicated that they've had no issues with servicing vehicles through the enterprise fleet program, and allowable industry fees or the allowable fees are industry standard and payments are prompt from enterprise. We had some discussion on the color of trucks. Enterprise is recommending that the color of the vehicle remain either white or black in order to maximize the rate of return of the vehicle. Staff are recommending standardizing on white vehicles and do not recommend moving to black. The township can choose to remain with red. However, it should expect additional costs of between $500 and $1,000 per vehicle, mostly due to a lower resale value. So the white vehicles have a much higher demand, especially on the corporate side, for when they're being purchased as used vehicles. As part of the decision-making, staff have included in the cost of the vehicles the addition of high-vis reflective striping, and we'll look at wrapping tailboards with high-vis reflective material for vehicles regularly used in high-traffic areas, such as our patrol or supervisor vehicles. There are a few other non-financial benefits, or depending on how you want to define financial, but maintenance is one of them. Our township mechanics, which are licensed as heavy-duty mechanics, will be able to spend more time on heavy and equipment, our heavy and equipment fleet. As the township continues to grow and additional light fleet is added, this will impact the amount of time that staff have to work on the heavy and equipment fleet, which is their first priority. Reallocation of the annual procurement time for staff to other needs as the program is LAS approved, and the traditional procurement methods for light duty vehicles would not be utilized. Vehicles are ordered for their specific tasks. So rather than upsizing for all potential possibilities over their 15-year lifespan, we would size the vehicle for what the immediate needs are. And if that needs change, then we would change the vehicle. The turnaround schedule is more conducive to moving towards a greener fleet in a shorter time frame, as each vehicle will be assessed when it is sold, and as the technologies continue to change, the township won't be tied to the traditional 15-year rotation that our current fleet utilizes. Once the vehicle has been purchased, which will better align the township for the transition to a greener fleet. And this would assist with aligning the fleet with the initiatives identified by council in the strategic plan. Newer vehicles are safer overall and provide improved fuel efficiency and more dependable service, and greener technologies such as hybrids and electric vehicles. And that concludes my list of answers, hopefully, to some of the questions that council had. And I'd certainly be more than willing to answer any other questions.
Any questions on this program? I'll go to the deputy.
Thank you. First off, excellent presentation. Answered a number of my questions, so that's or concerns, so that was very good. You sort of touched on it, but I just wanted to make sure with the I guess it could fall under the non-financial benefits. So in the future, really, the only staff time that would need to be put into replacement or purchase new vehicles would be identifying the model or style of vehicle, and then it would be turned over to enterprise to be able to actually source it and provide it. And so that would take it seems to me that would reduce a lot of staff time during procurement. Am I correct?
That is correct. And what we're understanding is we will be assigned a client or a customer service rep who would deal with us on a regular basis. And that person will be in touch with our fleet supervisor, who will have regular discussions on when is the best time to trade vehicles in order to maximize the return on those vehicles, looking at both the market rates for new vehicles and the market rate for used vehicles. They will also monitor our maintenance costs on those vehicles to see that things are proceeding the way we expected, or are there any surprises coming along there. I know with the fire chief has indicated that they utilize the LA, it wasn't enterprise, but they utilized the LAS program, and they figured they saved a considerable amount of time with the recent procurement of the new pumper by being able to go through a pre-approved program for those vehicles. So we expect it to be a considerable amount of savings once we're set up. Obviously this year we're spending a fair bit of time setting up the program and making sure everybody has a comfort level on moving forward. So.
Thank you. That answered my question.
Any other questions? Mr. Scott, you made mention of the process that would take place in the event of an accident, that we could choose to spend $100 and have the enterprise staff kind of manage the whole process with the insurance company. And that's where my kind of a little flag ran off for me, was the idea that it is still our insurance company. It's not their insurance company that we're working with, right?
That is correct. It is the township insurance. It's our deductible. All they would do is manage the repairs on our behalf. And I can tell you, we just recently received a vehicle back that was stolen and had some damage done as a result of that theft. And that has been about a 2-month process in dealing with the insurance companies, dealing with the auto body shops. So paying $100 and turning that over to somebody else who can do that on our behalf is priceless from the amount of frustration that our staff have dealt with on that one. So
understood. Thank you. Any other questions with regard to the new fleet management proposed system? Councillor Parks, go ahead.
Thank you. Just a couple of quick questions. In the presentation, they talk about at the end of the 5-year or the 10-year plan, when the vehicle goes back, that you typically would be looking to sell it for more, or enterprise would sell it for more than what was owing on it. What happens if the value is not there on the resale? Like, who pays for that? Are we bound to pay for any shortfall?
Yes. So Enterprise's estimate used the I believe it's black book value is what they use for, and they use the vehicle in the worst possible condition as their estimate for our leasing costs. So they're not assuming that these vehicles are going to come back in pristine conditions at the end of the lease period. However, if the used market is dried up and the used prices are not where we think they would be, and there was a shortfall, then we would pay the difference. On the other hand, if the value of the vehicle is more than what they estimated, then we get the additional funds back. This is not like a lease that someone would sign with a local dealer. It's a completely different style of leasing program.
Okay. Anything else, Councillor?
Just one more question. How many vehicles in total are in the light fleet?
So we have 48 vehicles in total in the light duty fleet. And that involves half tons, 3/4 tons, 1 ton, 1.5 ton vehicles for all the different departments, with the exception of the emergency services department, which manages their own fleet.
Thank you.
Any other questions from anyone? Deputy, I'll go back to you.
Just one other thing came up. Just to confirm, the budget is based on purchase of all of the vehicles, so any savings would be applied towards the budget and reduce the budget by that percentage, I guess. Am I correct?
That is correct. There's a considerable reduction for the 2022 budget. That being said, it's not every year, it's not necessarily lower, and that's why we wanted to look at it over the 10-year plan. So over the 10-year plan, there's a couple $100,000 in savings over that period. So while we're looking at about I think it's 600,000-700,000 less for this year, next year could be more or less. You have to look at each individual year as you join and see what that number looks like. So
Anyone else? Just I have one further, and I will ask if you could bring back up that timeline financial page. That's the one. I would note that, far right column, lease versus purchase, it starts out at the negative 104, 140, and it bounces back and forth a little bit. But I note that towards the end of the 10 years, it's creeping up into the positive side of things. Is that the expected trend? And what would it look like in kind of year 11, year 12, et cetera, if we continue towards that?
So what you'll see is on the bottom of the revenue resale of the 12-year-old vehicles is we just estimated and put it all in the last 10 years. That resale value of those vehicles is what our cost would have been if we sell them. So that kind of throws the numbers to the end there with the savings, rather than trying to divvy it all out in between. So like I say, we started with a 1 year plan. We looked at the 5-year plan. It went to a 7-year plan. We went to an 8-year plan, up to the 10-year plan now, just to kind of get a sense that those numbers are going to be there in the long term. And the feeling over the 10 years is that the savings are still there, and the savings are expected to be more than what are actually shown in that chart based on Enterprise's proposal.
Okay, thank you. Any final questions? Okay. I note that the director's back in. Ms. McFarland, did you have anything to add at this time? Okay.
Nothing further.
Okay, then I think if we're done with that one, we go back to Phil.
Yeah, back to me. Highlight of the night. Actually, next I'm going to kick it over to Ms. Chapman, and she's just going to talk specifically about a capital projects app that the staff have been working on, but I'll leave that to Ms. Chapman to discuss.
Thank you.
Thanks, Phil. So council received a link through an email, and what it is it's a capital project map, has been developed through the IT GIS division that provides a visual on the capital projects planned in Loyalist Township. So your link was interactive. It's not live at this point, but it will. The intent is that it will be public facing to allow people to go in and look at where projects are planned. The app that's been created allows staff to take their device and input the information, which will then populate into the app. And it doesn't show on this one, but in the information that went out to council, it basically, when you click on the dot, it will expand into information that's part of the project. So again, we look forward. We think it should be pretty soon that will have a front facing or a public facing, but we will do a communication plan as well to get that out so people know.
Excellent. Thank you. Council, questions? I just wanted to add in that I thought it was really neat that we could do that. I'm seeing a few nods, maybe council agreed, but thank you for presenting that. And if there's no further questions on it, we'll move forward. Mr. Renier, back to you.
All right. This is everyone's favorite slide where I remind everyone that the budget is a policy document, and you will still hear from us many, many more times to ask for your approval and input on many, many different things throughout the year. And next, I'm just going to throw it to Mr. Silver, our esteemed CIO, and he's just going to go over the next steps. Mr. Silver?
Hey, thanks, Phil, for changing the slide. All right, so as you know, Council or Committee of the Whole recommended an operating budget to Council last month. So this is the discussion on our capital recommendations. So there are recommendations, suggested motions contained in the report that was distributed with the agenda. So we've reviewed the discussion in the budget items by Council. So we're seeking any amendments that Council might want to put forward. And then we'll take those recommendations from the Committee of the Whole and to the February 14th meeting, which is advertised for a budget bylaw, which will be presented at the March 14th Council. And then on March 14th, a bylaw will be presented for Council's final approval. But having said that, Phil thanked the staff for their contribution at the beginning of the presentation, and I would just like to thank Phil and Brianne. Brianne's a silent partner in all of this, but she has done a considerable amount of work on this as well. Our budget presentations just keep getting better and better from the 4 years that I've been involved with Loyalist. So that's a reflection of their work, I'm sure. So with that, I'll turn that back over to you, Your Worship. And if, assuming the discussion doesn't go late, we won't need to meet on Thursday if there are recommendations from this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Council, I would point out, as Mr. Silver indicated, there are recommendations in this report under 4.1, a number of them. I don't know if we want to go through them individually but before we get to the actual recommendations, I just want to give Council an opportunity to speak to any concerns, any questions, any thoughts or directions that they would like to present at this time with regard to the capital budget. And I see no members of Council sticking their hands up. I did see our Deputy Treasurer putting his hand up for a moment. Right? Maybe he just wanted to show off the little guy walking around the question mark.
Oh, I spend my day. I was just going to say, I can bring up, when the time is ready, I can bring up a slideshow to go through the motions, kind of like prior presentations when the time comes.
Okay, thank you. So, Council, I come back once again. Any comments, generalized statements? And Deputy, go ahead.
Just because I've spent a lot of time asking questions on the enterprise pilot project, I think staff did a very good presentation tonight and explained a lot of the leftover concerns or issues that I had. And so just to speak to the one motion there, when we get to it, I think it is good for us to really consider it. Cost savings and time savings for staff appears to be a complete given. So, and I guess I do have one other question as well.
Go ahead.
And it's more related to the overall general budget. When we wrap everything up, I haven't, maybe I missed it, but I haven't seen where, when we marry the operations and the capital together, what kind of percentage or outcome there is with the overall budget.
Either Mr. Silver or Mr. Renier, you wish to speak to? Or Mr. Dickey, I suppose.
I believe we're still looking at 1.7, are we, Phil, on this?
Yeah. So this capital budget has no impact on what we presented for the operating. The 1.9 general rate contribution was what was in that 1.7 operating budget way back when. So there is no impact on the tax levy as a result of this capital budget. If
Thank
that
you.
answers your question.
It does. I've just got to ask the question just to make sure.
If we said we don't want to put that much capital in, or if we said we want to put more capital in or have less debt or something like that, that would then change that number and therefore potentially change the 1.7 back in the operating, but as I understand it anyway. Other comments or questions? At this time, I will take the opportunity to say thank you to Mr. Renier, Mr. Dickey, all of the staff, Ms. McNevin, all of the staff involved in this budget presentation. And the one person who never gets thanked about all of this stuff, I know that Mr. Silver has had his fingers all over this for quite a while. So I wish to express my appreciation for the entire staff and their efforts towards this. That being said, Mr. Renier, I believe you said that you've got some slides on the recommendations.
Yeah, I can go through the resolutions and then do that. So everyone can see it. I skipped the title page because it's still Fed operating. I missed that. So we'll just go right into number one.
Okay.
So yeah, the first resolution is pretty straightforward. The 2022 general rate capital budget be received totaling $10,663,200. Pretty straightforward.
Any questions? Okay, keep going.
Okay. So number two is the 2022 utilities capital budget be received totaling $3,942,600. Again, pretty straightforward.
Questions or comments? Mr. Renier, just to confirm, that is completely in line with the proposed, with the utilities rate budget that was proposed and passed, I think last October, November, whenever it was.
Yeah, that was near the end of November. We set the rates for 2022, and yeah, this has no impact on those. Well, we didn't increase the rates; we kept them level.
Yeah.
So that's still the case.
Thank you. Okay, any other comment? Move to the next one.
The next one's more getting into the public notice stuff. So public notice of intention to adopt the 2022 capital budget be posted on the February 14, 2022 council agenda and advertised in local newspaper and social media. So again, that's where Mr. Silver spoke that it'll be on the agenda on February 14th. And then hopefully actual adoption of the bylaw would be the March council meeting.
So this is when we publish it. A month later is when we pass it, is the goal.
Yep.
Thank you. Keep going.
And that speaks to that. The 2022 capital budget be referred to the March 14, 2022 council agenda for adoption. And that's where it would, all goes well, would be adopted then.
Pending any changes or amendments, etc. in the meantime. Yes.
Number 5, this kind of speaks to the hub again. We kind of had a similar motion last year, but staff bring back a report to obtain direction from council on the community hub once grant application results are received. So either way, we find out on either of those streams, we need to come back to council. And that just speaks to that.
Absolutely. Any comment? Nope. Keep going.
All right. So the next motions are where it gets a little more in the, this specifically relates to the fleet and the pre-budget approval. So the committee of the whole recommends as follow. There's A, B, and C. So A, that council pre-approve following 2022 light duty fleet projects from the capital budget, regardless of the outcome of recommendation 6C below, which we'll get to. That speaks to the enterprise. This is basically asking for pre-budget approval to go ahead with the 2022 vehicles and equipment replacement, 2022 fleet light duty, and then a new facility truck. So what we're asking for is they want to get those ordered regardless and get that process going. So they'd be looking for that pre-approved, I believe, on February 14th. Is that correct? Sorry. So that's the correct, is that we can't wait till March 14th for those. Either way, we want to get the light duty and the vehicles going ASAP.
Understood. Okay. Thank you. Questions? No, keep going.
So then part B of that is council pre-approve the following. These are the 2023 capital projects from the short-term capital plan. As highlighted earlier, there's the 2023 fleet heavy-duty vehicle requirements, 475,000, vacuum roll-on roll-off unit for 125, and the loader with plow and wing for 375. So that's the total of 975. So again, that is to get the pre-budget approval so that they can be ordered this year for hopefully delivery next year. And just to be clear, that 975, that's not part of that 10.6 million this year. That's 2023 budget money.
Okay, any questions? I will actually add the comment that it is a reasonably unusual thing that we would do in that council normally does not go over the term of council and make a commitment into the next term. However, with the difficulty of getting this equipment and the length of time required for that pre-order, personally, I think it is a worthwhile thing to take this step at this time. Go ahead, Mr. Inya.
Oh, sorry, I skipped ahead, but so then the last part is C, and this specifically speaks to the enterprise fleet management. So the council approved one of the following options with respect to the enterprise fleet management program. One, either continue to investigate and further refine the business case and financial model. So basically ask us to go back and keep doing more work and doing a more deep dive on it. Two, enter into an agreement with enterprise fleet currently up for replacement until the end of 2022 with future adoption of program contingent on the program's success. So that's speaking to, we would essentially be approving a pilot project where in 2022 right now we have those 16 vehicles with the carry forward that we're going to be buying this year potentially. That's saying let us run that through this fleet program, and that would be option two. Or three, stop investigation of this program and continue to manage flight duty internally. So tell us just to stop. So those are the three options. So we are asking for some direction from council on one of those three options.
Thank you.
And that's it for the resolutions.
Thank you. I'll get you to turn off sharing for a moment. And I will ask council. Council, do you want to do this all in one shot, or do you want to split it up in any way? Specifically noting that item number 6 has 3 major sections and some decisions. Okay. But I will look to council to make motions one way or the other. Anybody coming up? Oh, there's the deputy's hand. Okay.
I'd move to receive the report and adopt the recommendation with it being 6C2, that we enter into the agreement with Enterprise Fleet Management to pilot the program for vehicles currently up for replacement until the end of 22, with future adoption of program contingent on the program success.
Thank you. And just for clarity, that is moving the recommendation, approving the recommendations 1 through 5, and then 6,
Yes.
A, B, and C 2.
Right.
Just to have clarity. Okay. Do I have a seconder for that? I'll go to Councillor Townend, a seconder. Mover, would you like to make comment?
Just that I appreciate the staff time that went into it, and it made it pretty clear. And if I can understand some of this stuff, then you're doing very well. So they've answered all my questions, and I feel pretty good. Like you said, there's some unusual stuff like the purchasing past the term and things, but I think in this case, we need to do it. And the enterprise, I guess I was one of the, they had a hard sell with me, but I think it is going to be beneficial. And I think that being into it for the year and being able to assess it and come back, that would make it so that the next council, they have the power to carry it forward or change the direction.
Thank you. Seconder comment.
Only that I think Phil's a great MC.
And any other comments from council? Councillor Buderick, go ahead.
Have we appointed someone in staff to be a point person to kind of monitor this pilot project? Just because it is a lot of money. It is a serious changeover in our fleet and our fleet management. And I didn't hear of, as much as they called it a pilot project, I didn't hear outside of Alex to say he was involved in it. I was just curious to see kind of what we're prepared to do on managing it. That's all.
Yeah, Laura, I don't know if you want to speak to that or.
Yeah. Through you, Mr. Mayor. Gaurav Sharma, our transportation and fleet supervisor, will be keeping a very close eye on this program.
Yeah, and from the finance perspective, Councillor Buderick, I can say that finance has been included in all the meetings with Enterprise, and I'm sure it will continue to be. So from a finance perspective, I would say we feel secure with this pilot project. So for what that's worth.
Any other comments? I will add that one of the pieces of this project that I really appreciate is the idea of what I would call right-sizing the vehicles. As Mr. Scott spoke to, over the years, we've tried smaller vehicles, we've tried larger vehicles, and we kept on coming back to have to buy one vehicle that'll suit every possible purpose over the next 15 years. With this, because we would only have them for that shorter period of time and they're well managed, we would be able to right-size the vehicle, which I think is both a service benefit and an environmental benefit in the long run. And the ability to migrate towards the hybrids and green vehicles is certainly a benefit to this as well. With that, I will put it back to the mover for any final comments.
Nothing further, thank you.
Anything further? Then I will call the question. All those in favor, please raise a hand. And those opposed? Motion is carried. Okay. With that, next item is adjournment. I would make note that we are tentatively scheduled to have another meeting on the capital budget for February the 3rd, next Thursday. With this, at this point in this discussion, I don't believe that there is a necessity to have that meeting unless other members of council wish to counter. No? Madam Clerk, do I need a motion to cancel the Thursday meeting?
I would, Your Worship, yes, just so that we can take it off the notice.
Okay. Council, would anyone like to make that motion? Councillor Townend, so moved. Do I have a seconder? Deputy, thank you. Any comment? I'll call the question. All those in favor, please raise a hand. Any opposed? Motion is carried. And then we move to adjournment. And a motion to adjourn, please. Councillor Buderick, seconded by Councillor Parks. Thank you. Comment? I'll call the question. All those in favor, please raise a hand. Any opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. We are adjourned. We have completed the committee of the whole work on both the operating and capital budgets. And so we look forward to seeing these reports on the February 14th agenda. Have a great evening, folks.